We should have like joke of the week, and every week we tell a joke in the 30 seconds during the countdown.
Fucking
We
hell,
can have alternating turns.
you should have some dad jokes up your sleeve.
Haven't got one this week.
Good evening, punters, and welcome to another episode of The Tripod, where we break down every NRL game every week from a betting perspective. This week, we will be going through round 4 of the NRL. Last week, first week back in a little while, and it was a bit of a lackluster start for us. 6 wins, 6 losses, which isn't what we're after, but still not a bad losing week to start off. Jacob, how did you find round 3?
Yeah, I know it feels like last week was round 1, and I was disappointed in our best bets, of course. And you had the opportunity to see our round recap, which we released on Sunday, and we talked about each game. But I was still overall, I got to admit, quite happy just to have the footy back. It's a good feeling, and we've got plenty more weeks ahead of us. And as you say, you can do worse than 6 and 6, and the truth is that even as good as we are and we have been, when you're roughly going with 50-50 bets, I think you still probably have to be prepared to have a losing round, at least almost one every 3. I know we've done a lot better than that historically, but if you're winning 2 out of 3 weeks, you're overall making money. Certainly in round 4, we're going to be looking to do that.
It reminds me a bit of the stock market. The stock market goes down pretty much 1 every 3 days, but in the long term, it is up fairly significantly, and that's what we are aiming to do here. Jacob, while I introduce
one more thing, mate.
Sorry.
Round 4, the key here is not overreacting to round 3. Every punter thinks he's worked out all 16 teams based on what he saw last week, and I actually think that where money can be made this week is going against some wrong assumptions, because some things are real and you've got to separate the noise, because some things that happened last week are just natural variance that happens in any round of any season as well.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Especially first week back, I think you have a bigger overreaction than any other week in the entire season. So let's get things kicked off with the Thursday night game. We've got the Broncos hosting the Roosters, and while I introduce this game, Jacob, and talk about it a little bit, you may need to move your mic just a tad. It's got that static going again. I'll let you know when it's all good. So we've got the Broncos hosting the Roosters. The Broncos are 8.5 point underdogs, and the total sitting at 37.5 points. This line creeping up, that's good. This line creeping up towards 10 now, and pretty much double digits in most places. So a lot of the punters coming after the Roosters here and want no part in this Broncos team that got absolutely lit up by the Eels on Thursday night. That was our first best bet, and we had 4 best bets on that. We were on the Eels, and they did punish them. And look, although I do like the long-term prospects of this Broncos side, I think at the moment they are fairly depleted. Although they get, a longish turnaround from the Thursday game, they are a little bit banged up. You've got Turpin that's been named, but he's still got that knee injury. You're missing Tony Staggs, who's been one of the Broncos' best over the first 3 weeks of the season. You still got Alex Glenn's out. You still don't have TPJ. You still don't have David Fifita. So, the strong parts of this Broncos side are your forward pack and that kind of thing, and it's just not a fully healthy forward pack. Now, in terms of the Roosters, very impressive win last week. We said that this is not a team that you want to actively look at going against despite being 0-2. In fact, they're possibly even a more dangerous side being 0-2. And now you have Victor Radley not suspended, so that's a boost for them. Now you have Orbison that could be included. That is another boost for the Roosters. So this is a huge game for the Roosters side to get to 500, and they're not going to be looking ahead either. They've got a shitty Bulldogs side next week, so I think the Roosters will be completely up to it. But the line at 10 is probably getting up towards a fair line.
Yeah, this line was closer to 6, I guess, on Sunday. And obviously Radley escaped suspension last night. Maria Hargraves, I think he just got an early guilty plea and was never going to miss a game. As you mentioned, Orbo could return. TKO also could return. So this Roosters team that was exceptional last Friday night is only going to be stronger when they take the paddock tomorrow night. And you talked about the Broncos, who were pretty gallant in defeat against Parramatta. I think that the score blew out late, but they were quite brave, and I think they showed some character there in the way they did hold their line for periods in that game. But it's like now you're probably playing arguably an even better team, and you've got even less troops available. So I don't see how they're going to reverse the result. I know Brisbane beat the Roosters in this matchup at Suncorp last year. I think the Roosters remember that, and I just think that they've got the eye of the tiger, the Roosters. They're still 1-2. They've got all their key players in a shortened season. They're dialed in. They're going to come in and they're going to be way too good for the Broncos in this one.
We've just got one best bet to start off the round. It is taking the Roosters team total over 22.5 points. You'll find that one at $1.92 on Ladbrokes and on Neds. If the line was still 7.5, we probably would have had a few more plays on the Roosters. But alas, we record this one on Wednesday afternoon. Next up, Friday early game, we've got the Panthers laying 6 points against the Warriors. The total is 37.5. Although the Panthers are the home team, they're not playing any games at home. This one's at Campbelltown, so pretty much a neutral venue here. Really disappointing for the Panthers last week. We were on them along with a lot of other punters, and Jesus, at 14-0, you really thought that they were going to run away with that one, and it wasn't to be, and they're going to get a rocket lit up them this week, and I do expect a better performance out of this Panthers side. Still don't have Cleary for one more week, but lucky you've got the Warriors team, or what you thought was lucky to have the Warriors team this week. Look, it's not a great spot to take the Panthers. Now, they are the far superior team. They are the far superior forward pack, but it's a rough spot. I know it's still early in the season, but off an extra time, 90-minute grind where, you should have had the game won. Bit of a heartbreaking draw. I know it's a bit harder to play 90 minutes than 80, but early in the season, I think playing an extra time doesn't matter as much. Plus, you have a bit of a sandwich spot in the fact that you've played an extra time game, you have the weekly Warriors, and then next week you have to look forward to the Eels. So it's a tough spot for the Panthers. In saying that, I don't know if I want to take the Warriors. I think a lot of punters will this week off the 18-0 drubbing of the Dragons last week. But you're missing Peter Hiku, you're missing Ignatius Parsi, and one game doesn't make me want to trust this Warriors outfit. So, look, although I think the Panthers will win this one, I'm not about to lay a converted try, but at the same time, I don't want to take it with the Warriors either.
And just to add to a taxing 90 minutes, that was played on a Sunday, and they're backing up the shortest turnaround you can have, Sunday to Friday. The Warriors played the day earlier and had about the least taxing game you could have in an 18-0 walkover where they had all the ball and had no questions asked of them. So they would be fresher. Another thing, of course, the Warriors are a confident side. When they win, you don't necessarily think, they're overrated. They get good spirit out of that. And look, from a Warriors perspective, it's a winnable game. And if they do win it, 2-2, this season is alive, as opposed to are they going to stay in the comp or not? Well, either way, they're going to be like one of the bottom sides and get flogged every week. And now there's, real belief. But you're right. They lose Parsi and Hiku and, lost Fusatua before kickoff last week. And whereas the Panthers get stronger, I think Liam Martin will be a big inclusion into this team. I don't know why they dropped Naden last week, but Naden is another option to come back into this side. And what you'd have to understand is that when you've only seen one game recently, a team is only as good as your opponent lets you play. And we're going to get to the Knights. I mean, the Knights were so intense and so Herculean in their efforts against the Panthers. And the Panthers switched off mentally when they had the game won. You compare that to the Warriors, give them credit. But the Dragons were so awful. So I think people are getting an inflated opinion of the Warriors and probably a depressed opinion of the Panthers there. So I could only play the Panthers in this game. I know they miss Cleary, but I still think, as you said, the forward pack and the bench is the difference in this one.
No best bets on the Panthers game for now, but possibly we will release some on Friday when we do another deep dive. Let's move on to the Friday late game. We've got the Storm hosting the Rabbits. The Storm are 6.5 point favourites. The total sitting at 38.5, and that line is trickling upwards a little bit as we speak. This one obviously being played at the Storm's home ground at Amy Park. Now, I would not want to be a Storm player after last week's performance. Now, look, even though, you lose by 16 points, I didn't think that the Storm were that much worse than the Raiders on the pitch. I mean, a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of mistakes, which is not really Storm-like. And I think Bellamy would have absolutely sent a rocket up this Storm side. So I do expect this Storm team to come out with a point to prove in this one. So it's not a great time if you're the Rabbits to have to play the Roosters, who are 0-2, and now have to play the Storm after what's probably their worst loss in a little while, that's for sure. So I do expect a really good effort out of the Storm. However, look, this Rabbit side as well, they're 1-2 now coming into this one, off a loss to the Roosters, which wasn't a super grueling game. But, I know that they're the worst team, and, it's not a great time to play the Storm, but this Rabbit side isn't terrible. They're not horrible. Cody Walker, they miss a lot, I think. So they miss him a lot in attack. But if this Rabbit side can hang with this Storm forward pack, then, they have a chance in this one. But it's just an absolutely terrible time to come up against the Storm.
And the point you're making just speaks to line value. We both watch every minute of every game rugby league. We both agree the Storm are better than the Rabbitohs. It's a good spot for them. They should win. But your point is betting on the Storm at -6 is not the same as betting on the Storm if it leaks out to -10. So
Right.
there becomes a point where you don't make a profit long term if the line gets too high, and you're suggesting that it's creeping up. And yeah, this bet is not about going against the Rabbitohs. I completely just echo what you said. It's just an awful schedule for them to reopen the season, as you say, with a desperate Roosters, and now Storm off one of their worst performances. On top of that, without Cody Walker
Yes.
and without Roberts last week, maybe without him this week, like that is really bad luck. You know what? When Wayne Bennett knows his team is up against it and they are an underdog, he does mix up his game plan, and I will be very interested to see. I've seen them do it before, where he throws the typical ball control out the window and lets his team have a free reign, lets them throw 5 times as many offloads, lets them spread the ball. Is that a chink in the Storm's armor? The team that always used to win the wrestle and control the ruck for so many years and was the key to their success. The new rules don't allow you to do that. And people are suggesting that's one of the reasons they got smashed last week. As we said, it wasn't as the scoreline was a bit flattering to the Raiders, including a try right on the siren.
Agreed.
And to that point, the Storm made so many errors last week. They did 100 mistakes in that game, but they were correctable mistakes. And it's not, I didn't look at that game and say there's something wrong with this team. They're not switched on. They're not, ready to roll. I really look at that and say, if a couple of passes and a couple of moments, bounce their way, they could have actually beaten the Raiders, and everyone is applauding the Raiders this week. So I know Big Nelson is out, obviously. There's word that Craig hit him harder than he hit the bloke in Bali after the grubber through the line. So even if he wasn't suspended, I think Craig would have just about dropped him for that. But this is just a matter of taking the Storm off an embarrassing performance, knowing that you will get such a focused effort here, and it should be just too good for the Bunnies.
And for people following along with trends at home, the Storm have won 15 out of the last 15 against the Rabbits at Amy Park. For this one, we've got 3 best bets on the game. We are taking the Storm in the race to 20 market. That one you'll find at $1.82 on Unibet. The Storm minus 3.5 in the first half. That one's $1.88 on Ladbrokes and Neds. And Storm minus 3.5 in the second half. That one's $1.89 on BetEasy. The next best for that one is $1.84 on Unibet. Let's move on to the Eels hosting the Seagulls. The Eels are minus 3.5 point favourites. The total sitting at 40.5. This one should be a really good game with 2 sides that I do think will finish in the top 4 come the end of the season, but I don't think that's a crazy assumption. Look, the Eels just obliterated the Broncos on Thursday night in what was, a pretty impressive performance for me. And we've said at the start of the season, I'm really high on this Eels side. I think they are, a top form material. And I think that they benefit from the break and the fact that they've kept a team that's relatively intact spine-wise. And that helps for cohesion and chemistry when you restart a season off an extended layoff with no training. So I actually like the Eels in this one. And I think you like the Manly, Jake, and that's why we don't have a best bet. I've got a few reasons to like the Eels here. Firstly, you've got the extra turnaround. The Eels played on the Thursday night. The Sea Eagles played on the Sunday game. So you do get that extra bit of turnaround for the Eels. Plus, you don't have the travel here for the Eels. They are playing at Bankwest Stadium, whereas the Sea Eagles had to fly in, fly out for last week, and then fly into Bankwest again for this one. That does take it out of you a little bit. These are all just one.
It's not a flight. It's a pretty easy bus trip from Northern Beaches.
But you know what I mean. They travel either way, each way. Now, in terms of betting, I know a lot of people are going to be on the Sea Eagles in this one, and I can see why. People like to remember, especially, your average punter, remembers what they saw last. And what they saw last was a Sea Eagles side where Tommy Turbo looked like the best player in the league, and they just absolutely smashed a Dogs team. So I think people kind of forget what the Eels did to the Broncos on Thursday night. They remember what they saw the Sea Eagles do to the Dogs on Sunday. So I think, in saying that, I think this Eels side is completely legit. I think the Eels forwards are better. I think the Eels halves are better. And I think the Eels backline minus outside backs minus Tommy Turbo are better as well. So I think I've got the better team at home. I would be happy to lay the 3.5.
And I disagree with a bit of that. I'm interested. So if you think both these teams are finishing top 4, so who's not making the top 4? Storm, Raiders, or Roosters?
Storm.
put you on the spot. You got the Storm outside the four.
I said the Storm would miss the top four in the preseason pod.
Yeah, well, and I think that's crazy. But my point is, in the Premiership odds, there is a clear top four, and it is Raiders, Roosters, Eels, Storm. And I think Manly deserves to be in what should be known as a big five. I think Manly's as good as the rest of these sides, and I think that they're going to do special things in 2020. You talk about like people remember their game because it was more recent, but it wasn't a Channel 9 game. Whereas, I think everyone remembers the Eels flogging the Broncos in what was about the most watched sporting event in Australia this year, and one of the most watched around the world. So I don't know about that. I think both teams obviously put up big scores and were both equally impressive, the Eels and the Seagulls. I also have a new rule that I want to implement into the pod. I think without question, this is the game of the round, and my rule is we can't bet on the favourite in the game of the round. So last week said game of the round was going to be Raiders Storm. We shouldn't have taken the Storm because if you think it's game of the round, you think the underdog has a fair chance to win the game and to keep it close. And that's my logic, that I would take the points. It's not that I think Manly will win or that they should be favourite, but I think it's going to be bloody close. I just can't wait to watch this one. The different battles. Like you said, Eels have the better halves. I don't know. Moses is carrying a bit of a calf complaint. Moses against Cherry Evans is going to be a hell of a battle. Marnie versus Coruscant, the forward battles. I think Blake Ferguson against Tafu is going to be a huge problem. If you want to give an edge to the Eels, a pinpoint bomb there. I don't know what poor Georgie's going to do about Fergo towering over him. But then that's kind of cancelled out by Tom Trbojevic, arguably the best rugby league player on the planet right now. I know Teddy says hi, but Turbo, his last two performances have been ridiculous. I think ultimately the winner will be the team that controls the footy and has more possession, which is easy. That's not gone out on a limb to say that. But I do think it's going to be close, and that's why I'd be taking the points.
So no best bets on that one for now. Next up, we've got the Cowboys hosting the Sharkies. The Cowboys are 3.5 point favourites. The total sitting at 38.5. Now, if you have not been living under a rock, obviously you know that Jason Taumalolo is going to be missing for this Cowboys side for this game. I'd like to spend just a second to talk about injured player theory. We haven't mentioned it since the restart of the season. Injured player theory is a fairly well-known, betting theory in the way that if you have a very, very important player in your team get injured, generally the team does lift in that next week, kind of rally the troops and put in a really good performance. So that would be the Cowboys in this scenario. So that would be one reason why you'd want to take the Cowboys in this spot. But look, I think Taumalolo means a shitload to this team. And Jacob, you can probably get into it a lot more. But, without Taumalolo, this Cowboys side, even though their forward pack is good on paper, we saw what happened when they missed him. When they miss him, it's not the same forward pack by any means. And a lot of these guys are getting a little bit older on this Cowboys forward side. So, although the Sharks pack is getting older as well, I do think that there's reasons to like the Sharks here. First of all, you're getting them as a dog in two teams that I think, without JT, are fairly even. I understand that Chad Townsend's out for this one, but Moylan's played some in the halves, and he's not terrible. You're missing Andrew Fafita again, which obviously is a blow to the forward pack, but I think that these sides are fairly even. So, if you're letting me going to catch points with the Sharks, I know that the game's in Townsville, but no crowd. This is kitchen sink time for the Sharks too. They're 0-3, and if they want any hope of this season, they have to win this game, and I think they probably do.
Just to add to injured player theory, of course, when a key player is injured, the market reacts and adjusts the line and adjusts the odds to factor for that player being out. But what they don't understand is what you said, that, the 17 other players that are named that week, they all just lift that little bit more because they know everyone has to. And that often, it doesn't necessarily, we would never say the Cowboys are better without Taumalolo, sure, but everyone can get up because they know they've got a point to prove. We want to prove we're not a one-man team. The challenge is there to the forwards. This is actually going to be a great motivator to them to know we want to prove we can do it without him, so that when he's with us, he makes us great. So that's where the team effort counteracts a lot of what you lose with a player, but it doesn't just work for the rest of the year. After a while, you miss a great player. And he took that game away from the Titans last week. Yep. I think he had about 80 metres first half, comes on second half for the last 25 minutes, has about 200 metres. It's insane. And that's where, can we rate Taumalolo highly enough? Because I think he's the best forward in the game. And I think he's so important to the Cowboys in a team that doesn't have a lot of match-winning forwards, to be brutally honest. And I agree, Townsend out, but you get to start Moylan, pretty good playmaker to replace there, and Johnson can play the 7. Fafita out again does hurt. The Sharks season is hanging by a thread. I think the Cowboys will have a better season than the Sharks, but I could see them pulling together for this one and leaving it all out there up in Townsville. You don't make money betting against a desperate team, and you touched on it. This 0-3 Sharks are desperate. And if anything, give me a team that's going to, lay it all out there on the line, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the Sharkies.
We are taking the Sharkies. 3 best bets for the early ones. We're taking the Sharks winning at halftime or full time. You'll find that one at $1.80 on Sportsbet. I'd get on that one now. That won't be there for long. Next one is Sharks plus half a try. That one's $1.95 on Bet365. A lot of people ask where you find that one. It is under the score tab. And we're going to take the Sharks team total over 16.5 points. That one's $1.91 on Unibet. Let's move on to the Raiders hosting. Well, the Raiders up against the Knights. The Raiders are 7.5 point favourites. The total is 40.5 points. Once again, neutral venue, Campbelltown Stadium. The Raiders will not play home game, as we know, all season long. Now, the Raiders...
First 9 rounds, they're going to reassess.
Reassess. Look, the Raiders could not have been more impressive last week against the Storm. I thought they were great, and I thought it's one of the better games that I have seen this Raiders side play. They made the Storm look like chumps, won by 16 points. I think, though, they did, like I said, they capitalised on every single opportunity, like especially that first half. Storm had numerous chances, butchered them. Raiders, get inside the 20 and just straight away score a try. So... everyone's going to be thinking about that one and wanting to put their money on the Raiders because they were just so impressive. Now, Raiders actually going for 4-0 to start a season for the first time in 15 years, which is actually quite surprising. But let's get on to the Knights. I want to bet the Knights in this one. And I think the line will climb because I think the Raiders were so impressive. And I think that the Knights have some injury worries that we'll find out about a little later on in the week that will help us make our decision. But the Knights, just a great performance. And I think even though they ended in a draw, they're going to take some huge confidence out of that one, especially you're 2-0. And to get that extra draw, now 2 wins and a draw to start the season. That's very impressive from this Knights side. You get Ponga back. I think that's a huge confidence boost, especially coming off, an extra time win. You can have him shoulder a bit more of the burden there in terms of playmaking. Now, you lose Connor Watson, but, you slot Andrew McCulloch straight in there and, some may argue that that's an upgrade, at hooker. So there's a lot to like about this Knights side, not just from their performance last week, but over the first 2 weeks and the way that they came back and the heart that they showed, last week. So, this line's creeping up. If I could get over 8 with the Knights and I knew Mitchell Pearce was going to play in this one, I think there's no reason why you wouldn't take them.
And on top of losing Watson, who's your starting hooker, but you've got Randall, who's in the reserves, who broke the record for most ever tackles in a debut. But of course, you're losing like Watson's live wire ability in and around the ruck, his speed. But Ponga's back in the team, and Tex Hoy, who debuted last week, now plays in the utility position, and he can kind of replace what Watson brings to this team. Good. So I think that they have got enough to push the Raiders here. The key is Mitchell Pearce, of course. That was an ugly concussion that he copped early. He was lights out 5 minutes into that game. And I want to be sure he's through all the protocol and he's 100% playing. This is what happens. You put the money on the Knights at plus 7.5 or 8, whatever you get today. And tomorrow you wake up and find out that Pearce had some headaches or blurred vision and they're going to pull him out. And then the line's, close to 10. So There's no point betting on the Knights now. If you like them, wait until you know for sure that Pearce is in. Now, it was a monumental effort. We spoke about that, and you're right. Even though they didn't win, that is one of those efforts that builds character and belief that you can draw upon for weeks in advance. Let's talk about the Canberra Raiders, new favourites for 2020. I'm here to tell you they're overrated. And that does not mean that they're not an awesome footy team, because they are a great footy team. But who have they beat this year? They beat the Titans. They beat the Warriors. And they beat the round 3 Storm. The round 3 Storm that blew so many chances we don't want to keep repeating ourselves. So how impressive have they really been? They're a good team, but I don't know if they deserve to be like the outright favourites to win the comp just yet. I certainly can't lay a number of points with them, knowing that everybody is on the Raiders this week. So I agree with you. I know the Knights are still short a couple of key forwards as well. It's not the perfect spot for them with their energy levels after a sapping performance. You can't play with that desperation every week, but the Knights are the only way I could look with line value.
Let's move on to Sunday late game. It is the Titans up against the West Tigers. This one being played at Suncorp Stadium. The Titans are 6.5-point underdogs. The total sitting at 41.5 points. Geez, the Titans have been bad. Bad loss to the Cowboys, but that is a tough trip, going up to Townsville and playing against the Cowboys. I do expect a better performance out of the Titans this week. They don't have to travel as far. It's just down the road to Suncorp Stadium. But at the same time, not only is this Titans team devoid of talent, they are down on confidence, but now you've had another reshuffle in terms of personnel. And I just said, it's bad when you haven't had a lot of time to prep, especially with a 2-month layoff, when you're reshuffling all these players, mid-season. It's not a good time to do it, and that kind of stuff's always going to take a little bit of time to gel. So I do not expect this Titans team to be better straight away. Now, on the flip side, although I think this Tigers side is not a very talented side, and they have a pretty weak forward pack, but one thing that you mentioned, Jacob, that I think is very interesting is that this Tigers side has, kind of like this Eels side, has been, they've got the same sort of roster that they had for a long time. They've got that cohesion, they've got that chemistry, and that helps towards the start of a season. As the season goes on, you start to build connections and your teams it start to gel better if, you've got some new additions or whatnot. The Tigers don't have that, so I expect the Tigers to come out of the gates quicker in the first half of the season than maybe other teams, and then maybe, look to bet against them later on in the season once other teams kind of catch up in terms of chemistry. But in saying that, the line seems high-ish, but at the same time, it's like, can you see this Titans side putting in a performance good enough to win? And the answer is probably no.
And to say the Tigers have a weak forward pack is a bit harsh on the boys. I guess when you look at it, you look at their pack, and especially losing Madison, and it's like, which players in this forward pack would ever make like a state of origin type game? Like, you don't see it. But as a unit, it's a fit and physical unit that, fights hard and makes you earn everything for 80 minutes. And if they are fitter, and I believe this Tigers team is one of the fittest sides in the competition, just the way that Madge prepares his team, and, let's see how long they can sustain that.
Right.
Being a fitter forward pack allows you to physically dominate with your fitness rather than with your power. So I see no reason why the Tigers can't be even better this week. They played really well last week, but they had that 15-minute lapse where they let in 3 straight tries. If you take that out of it, and they would have destroyed the Sharks, and they're playing a weaker side. And you talk about the Titans reshuffling. This is not reshuffling the deck. This is 52 pickup. This is throw it all. And we backed the Titans to a degree in round 1. We took some unders, which we actually hit against the Raiders, hoping they'd play all right. They did. They got flogged. I mean, they hung tough second half. Yeah, that was all right. And then round 2, we took the Titans plus 5.5 against the Eels in the first half. They only lost the first half by 1 try, but they missed their conversion, so we lost that. In round 3, we said, 8.5, maybe we should take the Titans, like it's getting up there. But we were smart. We left it alone. And I don't want any more of the Titans right now, because what I realize is Holbrook's not even at this point trying to win games. He's just trying to find out who he's got that he can rely on and who he needs to punt out. He's trying to build character and attitude and habits. And honestly, do you really want to bet on a team and get like plus 6.5? And even the coach isn't really thinking, so short-sightedly that he's trying to put together the best game plan to win this week, because he's not. He's got a super long rope. He came and inherited the shittest team in the NRL, and honestly, no one's going to expect him to even make the finals for 2 or 3 years. He'd be doing well to do that. So, I mean, Roberts back to fullback. Aaron Clark starts at hooker. He's dropped Pearce, Wallace, Shannon Boyd, Whitbread, Pearson. Who knows how they're going to go? But I think the Tigers are definitely a level above, and that's why I'm happy to get at them any way we can.
Yep, and we've just got the one best bet for now. We are taking the Tigers laying at 3.5 points in the second half. That one you'll find at $1.89 on BetEasy. Like we said, just the Tigers' superior fitness should be a good bet there in the second half. Last game of the round. This one's actually a Monday game, so it's the Bulldogs against the Dragons. I guess it's a public holiday, so if you're going to watch this one, watch it. But it's probably the poop factor of the round. The Bulldogs are plus 1.5 points. That line moving into Pick'em now, and the total sitting at about 38.5 points. Now, I would say that this game is essentially loser leaves town in terms of the coaches. I think both on the hot seat, and I think pretty much this game will decide which coach gets sacked first in the comp. So I do expect, a decent effort out of both teams given those circumstances. This game being played at Bank West, pretty much a neutral ground. The Bulldogs played there a couple of times or once earlier on in the season. But I think this Dragons side is the better side on paper. But geez, the effort that they put through last week was just absolutely terrible. Both sides pretty talent devoid. The Bulldogs get back Kieran Foran, which is a boost to their playmaking. The Dragons, Adam Clune comes in the halves, even though he copped that broken nose, which looked pretty grim if you saw pictures of that, Jacob, but on Tuesday. But he's going to be good to go. Corey Norman to fullback, he's played a little bit there, so a bit of a reshuffle for the Dragons. Look, I know it's square, and it probably is square. People saying that the Dogs can't put on points. Obviously, the Dragons getting trounced 18-0 last week. But I see no reason why I shouldn't be playing the under here. Both sides, I know that they didn't score many points last week, but I don't believe that either of these teams can turn around their attack in 1 week. I've seen enough of these teams to start the season over the first 3 weeks to know that neither of them can light it up in attack. Plus, I know it's 4 days away, but the weather report for now is showing showers in the morning and showers around game time on the Monday. So, look, at 38.5, 39.5, I think we got, even if the weather was going to be crystal clear and fine, I would probably still be inclined to play under 39.5. But given that there's probably a 50-50 chance of getting some rain during the game, that puts me over the edge. Because honestly, if it rains, this total will be 34.5 come kickoff.
And let's talk about the total. So last week, I think we obviously have new rules. What's the purpose of the rules? For more open footy, for more tries, more points, more entertainment value. And I think the stats showed there was about an extra half a try per game. But what was funny was it just seemed to be, for whatever reason, a really poor goal kicking round. And a lot of games still went under because of a bunch of missed conversions. And obviously nobody's taken the 2 anymore to rack points up that way. So actually I think you'll find 7 of the 8 games last week went under after we all watched the first 15 minutes of Broncos Eels and thought every game is going to be in the 20s plus. So does it feel square to now take an under here, as you said? But the thing is, your average Joe on the street, he wants to bet overs because he knows the games are faster, he knows the new rules. But this isn't the game he wants to bet. So if the public's not betting over here, then I don't know if anybody is going to be betting it over. And I like the fact that we bet this on a Wednesday. It's happening Monday. But as you say, if the rain rolls in, it will only go one way. So that's where, we call that asymmetric risk, where I don't think this total is going to be 42 by Monday. But as you say, there's a chance it could be 36 or lower. Now, I look at this game. These were the 2 worst performers of round 3. Both teams were awful. So now somebody's got to win this one. It's funny how this is the final game that we've got to wait for. Yeah. They've got the longest amount of time to stew on how crap they were last week. And I look at it like the Dogs, you've had a preseason, you've had 2 games, and then you've had essentially another preseason, and here you are. And the Dogs make one change. So to me, that's like they believe in their team, and you bring in Foran because now he's fit, and that makes the team better. And I don't think anyone can argue Foran in, Cogger out. It's going to lift the spirits. He still is a leader amongst that group and can still offer something in the halves where they need it. What about the Dragons? Corey Norman's our fullback now. So what? But we didn't think Corey Norman was the best option at fullback when we started Lomax, and then we started Dufty. We bring Merrin and Luke and Clune. I hear good things about Clune. I think New South Wales Player of the Cup New South Wales Cup Player of the Year last year. But you wanted to start with Hunt and Norman this year in the halves. Corbin Sims is out. Fumayono has been dropped. To me, that reeks of desperation when you completely overhaul your roster and you're about to be fired if you lose. So I have more faith in the Dogs because they haven't opted for these kind of mass changes. But I will say, I suppose, the Dragons have a lot of veteran players. And sometimes veteran players, when all they hear all week is how crap they are, they do lift. And I could see that too. But here's a stat for you. St. George in their last 15 games have 2 wins. And they're both against the Titans.
I know, it's crazy.
They're hardly playing at NRL level. So I more so favour the Dogs, but I also like the fact that we can get under 39.5 when I've seen the total as low as 37.5 in places.
Yep, so no play on the sides, just the 2 plays on the totals for now. We are taking under 39.5 for the game. You'll find that one on Ladbrokes or on Neds at $1.89. We're also going to take under 19.5 in the first half. Same, Ladbrokes, Neds, and that one is $1.85. And that's going to wrap it for the week, guys. That's all 8 games. That was 10 best bets. Hopefully you got all of those. If you didn't catch them, we will release them in the Tripod app after the podcast is aired. But thanks once again for tuning in, guys. And look, Jacob, we are going to do a round recap same time on Sunday night. So we're just going to leave out the Bulldogs Dragons game. So we'll be here for a round 4 recap on Sunday. Hope to catch you then. Have a good night.
You gave some blokes a false hope, actually, because it's not a public holiday in Queensland. It is for New South Wales and Victoria. So if you're on your work commute, you want to talk to the boys about the footy on Monday, the pod will be up Sunday night. I mean, there's only one game we just talked about, and it's trash. So we can skip that one for the recap pod.
Yeah, we'll skip that one. But we'll catch you guys Sunday. And good luck on the punt. We'll see you Sunday.
Legal.